This is Voice of the Revolution. I'm Jakob Music. News today for July 11th, 2017, Gregorian year, and Juche year 106. In the French Revolutionary calendar, it is 23 Messidor on 225 of the Revolution. In the ancient Egyptian calendar, it is Ipit Himit 17. Today on this day, the Jews were expelled from the region of the Russian Empire called Little Russia, today's northern Ukraine, in the year 1740. First, with an entertainment industry scandal that has absolutely captured the American news media, revolving around one of America's most scandalous families, the Kardashians. A reality star named Blac Chyna is the mother of Rob Kardashian's child named Dream, and has been thrust into the news because of the abusive behavior of her ex-lover. After the couple called it quits, Rob Kardashian posted nude and sexual photos of Blac Chyna on both Twitter and Instagram. They were both taken down, but not before several thousand people were exposed to the photos. On ABC's Good Morning America, Blac Chyna re-emerged as an advocate against revenge pornography, a phenomenon that has almost exclusively belonged to the new millennium. Rob's actions after the disintegration of their relationship may be criminal. Instagram shut down his account, and in California, where the couple lived, revenge porn is an illegal act. This is true in 38 states in the United States, as well as the Capital District. It is also considered domestic abuse and was surely taken into account as Blac Chyna was awarded a restraining order against Mr. Kardashian. Lisa Bloom, Chyna's lawyer, said, quote, "I'm not asking victims to change their behavior, but that she is asking perpetrators to stop committing what is now considered a crime in most of the country." Blac Chyna is not one of the first victims, nor is she the first famous person to fall victim to revenge pornography. But because of her proximity to the Kardashians, she might go down as the most famous. Rob Kardashian, according to Lovely T 2002, had previously called singer Rita Ora a whore on social media. Paris Hilton will star in Demi Lovato's lead single, Sorry Not Sorry's video. Paris herself was a pop star from 2006 to 2013 and has recorded multiple albums worth of material that has never seen release. According to a poll conducted by the Pew Group, a majority of members of the Republican Party in the United States believe that higher education is, quote, bad for the United States. The exact number is 58%. There is a belief among some that universities are hotbeds of sedition and leftist thought, as well as the reality that student debt is crippling the younger generations in the United States currently with no ability to escape the debt through bankruptcy. I check on the music charts now. Billboard has released their charts for this week. Liam Payne with Strip That Down is at number 28 on the Hot 100. Bruno Mars is at 56 with Versace on the Floor. TLC has debuted on the Artist 100 chart at 69. Miley Cyrus with Malibu is at 27 at radio, and Lil Uzi Vert with EXO Tour Lift is at 32 on radio. On Spotify, Maggie Lindemann is at Pretty Girl at 26 on the global chart. Cheat Codes with No Promises is at 20 on our featured chart of the Czech Republic today, and it is at 41 globally. Miley Cyrus with Malibu is at 45 globally. Liam Payne with Strip That Down is at 13 at the Czech Republic, and Lil Uzi Vert with EXO Tour Lift is at 30 in the Czech Republic. 80 protesters were arrested inside the American legislature demonstrating against the direction of the health insurance reform process underway after President Trump's attempt to repeal the Affordable Care Act and replace it with the AHA, American Health Care Act. The protesters stormed the congressional buildings with ABC declaring that, quote, opposition grows, and the president also making it known that he expects a solution soon in a tweet aimed at his party members, imploring them to have a bill ready before they go to home districts for a recess in August. NBC of America also reported Republicans were, quote, feeling the heat over health insurance reform. Protesters in their video were heard shouting slogans, "Don't kill us," and "Kill the bill." People of seemingly all colors and ages were led out of legislative quarters they had stormed. NBC said Republicans were, quote, huddled behind closed doors. 5 Republican MPs are said to be opposed to the cuts to the Medicaid program that the current proposed bill would entail. Liberal groups are spending millions on ads in districts where Republican legislators are wavering. Ads showing parents unable to care for their children in an imagined future under the AHA are shown. The woman said, NBC featured those who relied on Medicaid who had also voted for President Trump. The woman interviewed by NBC said she was not pleased with the administration's policy toward the poor. Quote, right now a lot of people are looking at him as a turncoat on his promises that, quote, everyone deserves quality health care. ABC News covered the ongoing healthcare conflict on a broadcast July 10 as, quote, healthcare meltdown, showing protests not just in the nation's capital but in town halls throughout the country. This story captured the protesters' slogans, healthcare is a human right. Ohio, Texas, and Arizona saw demonstrations. Citing the Congressional Budget Office, ABC stated that 22 million more Americans will be without health insurance under the proposed AHA. A total of $772 billion of assistance to the country's poorest would be spent elsewhere under the plan. Islamic State seems to be in terminal decline, but that has not stopped recruits from the heart of the forces that are fighting it. An American soldier, Akaika Kang, was allegedly pledging his allegiance to the caliphate and attempted to leak information to them, according to the American intelligence agency FBI and ABC News. The FBI intercepted the attempted Takfiri militant when he conversed with an undercover American agent, revealing his plans to kill. After the governments of the United States and the Russian Federation agreed to create a ceasefire zone in Syria, Kellyanne Conway of the Trump clique berates CNN's Outrage Morning host Chris Cuomo for continuing to focus on the illegitimacy of the election via, quote, foreign meddling. Conway stated CNN did not cover the very important agreement on Syria, but continued to run Cold War II stories in a very high volume. Conway stated that in the first meeting between the leaders of the USA and Russia, the President of the United States, quote, pressed President Putin of Russia about alleged intervention in the United States. Cuomo, part of the CNN network, which is among the biggest purporters of the Russia-USA rivalry, then asked if the president pressed or just asked his counterpart about the elections, because simply asking would not be aggressive enough. Quote, you people say things that just aren't true, Conway said, as the segment begins to heat up. Cuomo said the president was, quote, squishy on Russia, a new word for those asking for confrontation, and again implying that the leadership of the United States is not aggressive enough. In what is perhaps the most prescient quote to come from American cable news in a length of time, Conway states, quote, it's about people stating things that they want America to think are true facts. Aren't you the least bit reluctant, if not embarrassed, that you now talk about Russia more than you talk about America? Conway said to Cuomo, who had answered no. As the televised argument continued, Conway explained the latest Cold War story, revealing the president's son met with a Russian who was connected with the Miss Universe pageant, a Trump-owned property. After Conway saying the meeting was nothing like the act of treason it was being portrayed as, Cuomo said he, meaning Donald Trump Jr., still agreed to a meeting, implying that agreement to meet a Russian person automatically is of suspect interest. Cuomo said the credibility of the Trump campaign became an issue because they spoke with a Russian woman. CNN's Cuomo continued to use the word Kremlin and Op-O research multiple times. What I have just presented to you, believe it or not, occurred before the segment even hit the 5-minute mark on New Day, CNN's morning program. Conway called out CNN and Cuomo for using specific propagandistic words such as collusion, opposition research, and others as part of their struggle with the president. Conway responded to the presenter by positing a legal case in court. Quote, your side would not even stand even a summary review of evidence. she said, and also said there was no evidence that the Trump campaign and the government of the Russian Federation were working together, then continued to counter CNN's points that seemed to be designed to raise and maintain suspicion that the president gained power through foreign intervention. After Cuomo excerpted a statement from the president's son on the encounter with a Russian woman who falsely claimed she had damning information on the campaign of Trump primaries rival Hillary Clinton, Conway demanded that CNN show the full statement of Donald Trump Jr. Quote, "You need to give the whole statement to be fair to you and to be fair to the viewers. You need to stop chopping it up and trying to go viral with the nonsense." Cuomo said, quote, "I admire your moxie." Cuomo continued to rattle on the anti-Russia line, while Conway looked off-screen, then said, "I admire your moxie," sitting there next to the CNN chyron, talking about credibility, referring to CNN's numerous mistakes, worst of which was in the aftermath of a terrorist attack in 2013, claiming that a, quote, "brown-skinned male had detonated a bomb in Boston. Attacks on brown-skinned people occurred after in the area. CNN did not take responsibility for the possible arousal of the masses after their false rush to judgment." CNN had also misidentified countries and led viewers to believe their reporters were in two different locations when in fact they were in the same parking lot, and other falsehoods, whether intentional or not. This year, CNN's most prominent mistake was reporting a fraudulent dossier stating that the president was sexually aroused by urine. CNN had received the intelligence files from a popular clickbait website, BuzzFeed. As Cuomo continued to attempt to tie Russia and President Trump closer together and imply he benefited from intervention, Conway countered, quote, "You want to create something," meaning a Cold War-like controversy, "because you have invested months in this now, at this network, at something that simply doesn't exist." All of this was before the 10-minute mark in the segment. That grew into what was to become a 34-minute segment on CNN, which is an eternity in American cable news. Continuing on, the advisor to the White House said, quote, "But you don't want to talk about the Syria ceasefire. You don't want to talk about how these two countries were able to come together, defeating ISIS, for example." Cuomo, lecturing Conway while turning slightly red, continued saying the president's son changed his story on the meeting with the Russian woman. Both the combatants are lawyers, and they are continually sparring, repeating the same positions as they push toward the 15-minute mark. Cuomo stated that actual content of the meeting was irrelevant. The fact that she was a foreigner, from Russia specifically, made it suspicious and potentially treasonous. Coming back to the level of practicality, Conway referred to the CNN host as Christopher, saying, quote, "Do you think anything you were talking about changed a single vote?" When he expressed confusion as to why her head would go there, Conway said, quote, "Because you have been talking about it for months." After stating that Conway didn't care that Russia was trying to get inside, quote, "your campaign," Conway began labeling off the Clintons' various Russian connections. At 15 minutes, the conversation started to truly go off the rails as both personalities began talking past each other. Conway began talking about plastic toys, and Cuomo began talking about the Trump administration's bashing of CNN and also saying, quote, "Thank you for the ratings." The pair continued with the following being covered. CNN reporting on daughter of the president sitting briefly in his seat, and Ivanka Trump's exploits with the World Bank to aid female capitalists and petite bourgeoisie around the world, what CNN does and does not cover, and then in one of the strangest moments in 2017 cable news, Mr. Cuomo attempts to signal an end to the segment, but Conway did not appear to comply, staying on air for another 16 minutes. She implored CNN to take responsibility for its place in America's contentious political culture. Quote, "As a 24-hour news network, I have faith that you can cover everything as opposed to the same things every 5 seconds, which, if you take the hyperbole out, is standard practice in American cable news." Conway then went rogue, listing the initiatives of the Trump White House, none of which had to do with what CNN's chyron said was the topic of conversation, the G20 summit. The G20 summit wasn't spoken at all of in the entire 30 minutes. CNN's own polling showed that it is the economy that is of the primary concern to the American people. The two, Conway and Cuomo, also revealed in the segment that they are privately friends. Supreme Leader of the Workers' Party of Korea and Chairman of the State Affairs Commission Kim Jong-un's wife makes a rare appearance in state media at a banquet held to celebrate the successful test launch of Hwasong-14, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea's first ICBM missile. As the branches of the armed forces made overtures toward the Supreme Leader, Comrade Ri Sol-ju followed at a distance behind an army officer goose-stepping. At the banquet, speeches were given by party members in a decorated room with several model missiles and tables filled with food and drink. After the speeches, a video opens with the American White House clearly visible, though the Korea Central Television report cuts to previously released footage of Hwasong-14's launch. Other weapons were also shown on large screens for the guests. Participants danced near the front of the stage as a female singing group performed. That was Voice of the Revolution's news for July 11. I'm Jacob Music.